Hello, my name is Dr. Carl Candlepun, and this is the 11th official episode of my Lost podcast. As such, it features spoilers for up to and including Season 1, Episode 11, All the Best Cowboys Have Daddy Issues. It features no spoilers beyond this point in the show. However, if you have not seen at least to this point in the series, I highly encourage you to do so first before proceeding with this podcast. But without further ado, let's begin. Hello, and welcome to another episode of Dr. Candlepun's Lost podcast. I am Christopher Huth, otherwise known as Dr. Candlepun.
And I am Mike Huth, also known as Medical Professional Flickerson.
And today we are talking about Season 1, Episode 11 of Lost, All the Best Cowboys Have Daddy Issues. Right before we started, you were saying that you had things that you were waiting to say until we were recording, so I'm just curious what those were.
Well, I can't get them all out because it'll kill the flow, but maybe I'll just blanket the whole thing with like, man, did I get to experience this for real, like a first-time viewer? Because some of the stuff that happened in here, I'm like, wait a second, that's not real, is it? Is that the end of that? And then
You're talking about like Charlie.
Yeah. I didn't know if I wanted to spoil it, but like Charlie Dunn.
Well, no, yeah, we're talking about the whole episode.
Okay,
I don't care
sweet.
where you go to first.
So it's like Charlie's dying, and I'm literally racking my brain during that scene, going like, wait a second, does Charlie really die? Is this the end of Charlie?
Yeah.
And then so I convinced myself, kind of, man, I guess it was, and I'm like thinking I'm having these false memories of him being later in the show, and then just like in real life, the 37th pericardial thump, he comes back to life. Yeah, so it's like, woo, yeah, just like that.
Being sarcastic. Well, there are reasons I think that works in the context of this story, without getting too spoilery about it.
All right.
Yeah, for me, the way that certain phenomenon work on this island in this story, such as Locke getting his legs back, and other things that I won't get into. Like, watching it this time, I was thinking about how I want to talk about that in my spoilery commentary, that like... Well, okay.
But also fitting, though, because Jack's not a quitter. Like, Dad made him quit last time.
Thematically, it makes sense for Jack.
Medically, no. Yeah, recapping on that, though, it was just that. It just made me... The episode gave me a whole, just overall feeling of like, man, this is just like the first time, because I don't remember much about it, and in the best kind of way. It was just super cool.
Yeah. Was it? I'm guessing that means you didn't remember that they don't get Claire back by the end.
Yeah, like nope, didn't realize that till the end of the episode. Here's a thought. I don't know if it happened 20 years ago, but this is also the episode where 100% Locke went from creepy Locke to me to like cool Locke.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Like me always had the coolness about him, right? I'm not taking anything away from him, but like when he starts actually man tracking and making smart decisions not based off of emotion and is trying to get them to do things. Now there might be an ulterior motive.
Well, no, I have a bit of a different. It's not so much about his decisions. It's more about his interactions with others. But yeah. Finish what you're saying.
So just I think when it came into like the tracking, him kind of knowing what was going on, and then I love the little thing with him and
Boone.
Boone, yeah, thank you. Boone's asking like, what'd you do in the real world, essentially? And then he tells him, he's like, yeah, right. Like I love that, because I've known people like that are so fascinating that their reality is just too bland for who they are, right? Like it's like, nah, you gotta be doing something much cooler than that.
Yeah. Well, so I have in my notes that like Locke's being kind of like dickish to different people in this episode.
like, the way that he dismisses Michael. She's like, well, yeah, no, more people are just going to slow us down. And then like, oh, sure, we're going north. Why don't you go south?
Yeah.
when he knows that they went north. And then when admittedly, Jack's being a dick to him too, which I'll get to in a second. But like, but Locke's like, yeah, I'm going to take a break. When Jack's being like, really, you're going to stop right now? He's like, yeah, I am. And he gets like real angry about it. The other thing too is like, he lets Boone come along, which doesn't seem dickish, but it seems to be in response to what Shannon's saying to Boone. Like, Shannon's trying to discourage him from going.
Yeah.
And Locke looks super annoyed by her.
Yes.
And that seems to be why he's like, yeah, and you know what? We could use somebody else.
Because she is Locke's old boss at that moment in time. You know what I mean? In his mind, he's like, yeah, you're not going to tell Boone what he can do.
Sure, yeah.
Been there.
Yeah, that's a good way of looking at it. Yeah, I did. My thing though is so I put it in my notes that Locke's kind of being an asshole to different people, and so is Jack. Jack's doing it to Locke from the beginning, and then to Kate later. Yeah, he's like, oh, did you learn tracking before or after you went on the run? And it's like, why are you being like that?
Yeah.
And I mean, do you have any thoughts? Like, I had a thought for why they're both being that way. I feel like it's the one that the episode's trying to suggest, but
again, I want to go to real life, and I want to go somebody who's got skill, somebody who knows what they're doing, somebody who's looking at it strictly business. Like, how are we best going to accomplish the goal we both agree we want, versus somebody who's emotional about it, right? Person who's going to run 100 miles an hour into a bad situation, righteously, for the right reasons, but then somebody who understands and feels it's just as important as this other person, but they're going to do it with the knowledge and the skill set that they have, so they don't put themselves in extra peril or become a secondary problem. So from that, it's hard for me not to think that way. I've seen it in real life. But there's another piece of me that it almost feels like, if it's not that, it's a little bit of Locke feeling himself like, oh, okay, now everybody can see what I'm made of. Like this is the thing, right? Like, you guys have seen me go out and kill boar. You've seen me be able to do this. You see me. Now I'm gonna get our people back. So it might be a little.
Well, except that, like, he doesn't even seem, and maybe this is a harsh read on him in this episode, but like, once they lose the trail, him and Boone lose the trail, like, he has no thought of like, well, we should double back and see if we can find it again. He seems like suddenly he has a completely different goal, and I don't think he knows what that is. I think he's following his gut, like he says, but he's not overly concerned with getting the people back that they set out to get.
Two things.
Okay.
Never double back. You never double back.
Oh, okay.
Locke has to know that. It's probably read a book.
Why do you never double back?
You run right into a trap. You've already been there. So you've been there.
So if you lost the trail and you're tracking somebody.
But somebody could be tracking you. So he knows he's after somebody who's bad, right? Mm-hmm. So like he's using his tracking skills. So now he's left all that in his wake. And he goes back, trying to get back on the trail. It kind of goes back to, they allude to it when they're finding Charlie's little Hansel and Gretel crumbs, right? His finger tapes. That and before they brought it up, I was thinking it. Like, I didn't remember it, but I was thinking to myself, like, oh, they're probably dropping Charlie's things, trying to get them to go away from where they actually went. And then there was a time in which I started waiting for them to ambush them, because they've led them around in a circle, and at one point they even said circle back. So again, and I'm probably thinking way too much into it, but I was thinking that. But to the second point, it's like he's lost, but like he's back on the spiritual journey, like to your point, right? Like there's like, he feels like the island's pulling him or something like that, right? And even Boone tries to get a little saucy with him. I think it failed pretty quick, but yeah.
Yeah, sorry. So
that's a lot.
No, there's a couple different directions I can go with that. I can go back to my original point, or you brought up something else that I wanted to talk about. Well, and I still got to circle back to the fucking...
Never circle back.
Well, so basically, my perspective on why both Jack and Locke are being kind of assholes to the people around them in this episode. I mean, they're a bit more explicit about why Jack is, because Kate ultimately asks him, like, what's going on?
Yeah.
Like, why are you being like this? she's like telling him to back off of Locke and whatever. And he says like, I didn't believe her. Like she came to me, she told me what was going on, and he's saying that it's his fault. I think that pretty adequately explains why Jack is lashing out at people around him. And I think that's what's meant to be going on with Locke too. Because Locke does say when they first come up on the scene where Claire and Charlie were abducted from, he says it was my fault. Like I was hunting with Ethan, and I never
saw anything.
Yeah, never saw anything off. So I think that's what's going on with Locke too. Because watching it this time, I was just kind of chuckling at like, man, Locke's kind of an asshole in this one. I was like, why is that? And then that was kind of what I came up with, was maybe it's meant to parallel Jack.
And that makes more sense than all the stuff I said.
Well, no, I felt like you were answering another question that I might not have thought to ask, but and I thought it was a good answer to that question of like just the different approaches that Jack and Locke have to the issue. Locke is much more like, okay, let's not just react. Like let's actually get our stuff together, our people together, and organize and approach this the right way. But okay, but getting back to the thing about the dummy trails that you brought up, you said they could be dropping those to mislead them. So am I correct in assuming that you're imagining it's more than just Ethan?
Yeah. And the reason I come to that conclusion is part because I don't even have to remember, 20 years ago to be like, well, I mean, look, there's not one person running this whole island and taking over a whole, survivor group or whatever. That was my thought process anyway. And then I thought to myself that, Claire's a fighter. Doesn't really matter that she's in a bad way. Maybe her water's about to break, whatever. A little premature labor, whatever it is. But Charlie's a recovering addict. He might not be the toughest dude on the block, but he's not going to just
let that happen.
He's not going to just let that happen. Now, later on, when Jack gets his lunch ate by Ethan, I'm like, right. Well, then again. So Ethan's been, practicing his fighting skills in the jungle for sure.
Yeah.
Well, and again, that's giving Jack too much credit too, but Jack's the hero kind of, right? So sticking with like what you're used to, and that main character can put up a pretty good fight in a fist fight, and Jack got smacked around a bit. So
yeah, in just this episode, there are a lot of things that I feel like suggest that Ethan had help. For some reason, the episode it wants to leave it ambiguous because they obviously don't show that there were other people, but all of the clues point to there being other people. Starting with when Locke first comes up on Claire's bag and is examining the footprints, he says there was a struggle here. There's at least 3 distinct sets. And then he says drag marks. Yeah. Surely Ethan couldn't drag both Claire, who's pregnant, and Charlie. Well, and surely they would be able to catch up to him a lot quicker. Yeah. Then you think about, I mean, when Ethan confronts Jack, if he was alone with Claire and Charlie, then does he got him tied up somewhere over the hill? And he's doing a lot real quick without them catching up to him. And then at the very end, and this to me is kind of the show revealing this, in my opinion. Jack's asking Charlie what he remembers and if he can give them any kind of information. He's saying, I didn't see anything, I didn't remember anything, or I don't remember anything. And then he says, all they wanted was Claire. Yeah. So something gave him the sense that there were other people there. And so when you take the thing that I find interesting about that, well, I mean, there's a lot. But when you go back to the dummy trail thing, it raises an interesting possibility that, like, if you have multiple people with these 2 captives and they only wanted one of them, like Charlie says, then it probably wasn't a dummy trail. Yeah. It was probably they split off. Yep.
They took Charlie one place and took Claire, who they really wanted, another.
Exactly, yeah. Well, okay, so I want to go to the flashbacks for a minute. It's a good test of your memory at the pace we're doing this, but do you remember all the way back in our White Rabbit episode, the 5th one? That was Jack's first full flashback episode, and his mom's telling him to go to Australia to find his dad, and he's like, I can't. She's like, you don't get to say you can't, not after what you did. We're kind of wondering what that was and why, he's off getting wasted in Australia. Did you remember that watching this episode?
You saying it, I remembered. I didn't even allow myself to think back that far. Mm-hmm. And the only excuse I'll use is I didn't remember I didn't remember this. I knew there was something, but I didn't remember this. And I got a little wrapped up in the whole emotions of it, probably more than I did 20 years ago. Just the idea of thinking to myself, like, Jack's not wrong, but it'd be easy to do the wrong thing for the sake of his dad and just be like, don't ever do this again, you know? Because what his dad's saying, you know, in the medical world and all that stuff, like, yeah, I mean, most people wouldn't even ask questions. So I kind of got caught up in that. And then the whole twist with the board doing the little, you know, just covering their bases, blanket little investigation or inquiry, and they're not expected to do anything. Literally wasn't ready for Jack to do that at the end of that. I'm like, man, why did I not see that coming? Like there had to be something that caused all this stuff between him and bam, there it is. Yeah. So yeah, it all caught me off guard. I did get wrapped up in the emotions, in the dilemma of such a thing for somebody that you care so dearly for, and it's not like you're helping them hide a body because they murdered a drifter, right? Like they made a professional error.
Well, and I think it's worth noting that there's probably some validity to Christian's position of, like, maybe this would have happened anyways. And again, I'm not saying that means Jack shouldn't have ratted him out.
Sure.
I'm just saying that, like, in Jack's perspective, like, that's another thing that he's like,
yes,
yeah.
Well, but you know, it's kind of but it really is a nice snapshot of alcohol and the way that people justify it in our world, like people who drink and drive and things like that. It's like, yeah, you could have gotten an accident anyway, but you were drinking, and so that's all anybody cares about at that point. Because as much as you can say, well, could have gotten an accident anyway. Well, yeah, but maybe you wouldn't have. Maybe you wouldn't have if you hadn't been drinking, or maybe it wouldn't have been fatal, or maybe, you know, whatever. And you take this, it's the same thing. Okay, so he clipped an artery doing heart surgery. I don't know what the statistical probability of that is happening across our globe on a daily basis, but then you just add a shot, a celebratory shot, like, oh yeah, and then it changes all the context of what, you know, coulda, woulda, shoulda.
But yeah, so I mean, it recontextualizes, though, now that you see what happened and how that led to his father's death. Like, that seems like that's a big part of why Jack was, like, desperate to get him buried, put it behind him, and you know, is so upset at the coffin being empty and all that. Yeah, so I like how they kind of established that mystery back in the 5th episode, and then, like, 6 episodes later, you get that resolved. Yeah. Did you catch the hand on the shoulder thing?
Yes. Yeah. And you know what? You know me. That's kind of the thing that I might miss. But as soon as it happened in Jack's reaction, I was like, oh. So yeah. That one stuck out pretty wild to me. Yeah.
That's something that I don't remember, like, when exactly I know. I don't think I noticed that the first time I watched it, but I feel like I've noticed it for a long time. Something that I didn't, like, quite catch for the longest of times. And I'm wondering if you did watching it this time. So after Jack wakes up from getting knocked out by Ethan, and Kate's trying to, like, tell him, like, no, you're hurt, we need to go back. And he's like, no, I'm not going to let him do this. And she's like, let him. He's like, not again. When you're watching it the first time, like, that doesn't make any sense. And then a little bit later into the episode, it's revealed in the flashback that this patient his dad killed, she was pregnant. And that's kind of the final piece that gets Jack to tell the board his honest opinion. Yeah, it was probably within the past few years that I was like, oh, like in that moment, like he's remembering back to, you know, his dad got this pregnant woman killed, and now he's in this situation, and he's not going to let that happen again. That's what he's saying. Yeah. And it's just a neat little.
It's like he's saying it to Kate, but Kate might as well be his dad, telling him to stop.
Well, Ethan might as well be his dad, because he's saying, I'm not like going to let him get away with it, not again. And again, like, Jack doesn't really know what he means, I don't think.
Okay, gotcha.
Like he's not making logical sense. He's just, his motivation in that moment is like, I wasn't able to stop that from happening. I'm going to stop this from happening. That I think is what's happening there. But like Kate is pointing out, he just hit his head. Yeah. He's out of it. And like, he's not really, he's just focused on the very specific goal.
I think, if you don't mind me adding on to that, I think, you know, when she's initially questioning, acting as if he just fell and hit his head. She wasn't that far away from him and misses this whole fight scene, right? It gave me a little like backward thought when they get a little bit further on and the voices start coming, and then Jack hears Claire scream.
Well, so you're getting the order mixed up a little bit. So he hears that scream. Kate says, "Hear what?" And then when he's rushing up the hill that he falls.
Oh, that's right.
And then the fight happens, yeah.
I guess those two things close together is the part that gets me. It's like she doesn't hear the voice, and now she's second guessing whether he was in a fight. It just gave me for just a moment like this, like, man, surely he didn't imagine that, and clearly he didn't.
It does seem like the episode kind of wants you to question Jack's sanity in that moment. Like is he kind of losing it here? And it's meant to be, it's meant to make you question if he even fought with Ethan. I think the reveal that Charlie was hung is meant to confirm that really did happen, because obviously he followed through on that threat.
I just had a thought that I didn't have when I was watching the episode, which is, I don't even know if it happens, but I'm already looking forward, in case it happens, to Ethan seeing Charlie for the first time and realizing he's not dead.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. I hope that's something cool that happened 20 years ago I get to relive. Maybe not.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, I'm trying to think that over. Like, because the way they hung him, I would have to assume. I mean, it just also would be the only way they could do it, really. Like, they're not trying to break his neck.
Right, yeah. No trapdoor under his feet or nothing.
Right, yeah. So, I mean, they just probably tied it around him and then pulled it up. Yeah, and then, I guess what I'm wondering in my head now that you said that is, like, did they think that it was a guarantee that he was going to die, or did they kind of think that Jack was going to come up on him in time
slow him down.
It would slow him down trying to save him, and maybe they anticipated the possibility that he would save him in time.
But yeah, you're not separating, you're not damaging the hyoid bone, you're not separating the soft tissue between the brainstem and the brain. If there's no trauma, it's literally just asphyxiation, and so come up on it fast enough, depending on the moments of unconsciousness or lack of oxygenated blood in the brain. Maybe Charlie's just a little goofier.
Yeah. Well, the last thing I have in my notes is the very, very ending scene when Boone wants to go back, and then Locke throws him the flashlight, lands on something. There's a lot that you haven't been remembering about what we've watched. I feel like this is the start of a plot thread that you probably remember some spoilery stuff from. Am I wrong?
No, I remember they find a treasure. No, I do remember.
I was just curious, like going forward as this plot develops, like if you were going to be trying to remember like what's going on with this thing, and basically just trying to figure out how much you and I are going to be talking about it based on how much you remember.
Yeah.
And it sounds like you remember enough that we probably won't be theorizing about it, which is fair enough. I'll save that for the group discussions. Okay, so now for today's fan mail section, if you will. We got a few comments on our most recently released episode, which was 109 Solitary, so from a couple weeks ago. We had a few different comments, one of which I'm going to address in my commentary episode on that, which will already be out by the time they're hearing this. It's very confusing. I apologize. It'll have been out for like 2 weeks by the time they see this. But anyways, the one that I wanted us to address comes from Lucas 43434, and what they're responding to is, if you remember our Solitary episode, that was the one where you and I both kind of agreed that we didn't love the episode, and we were kind of like talking a lot about like why that might be, and all the different little things that I didn't like, and none of that felt like the right answer, but maybe they all combined. Anyways, so this is what Lucas had to say. I love this episode. I love the Danielle Rousseau character and how she is portrayed, all of the intrigue around her backstory, and the whole idea of living alone in the jungle for 16 years after losing your child. I really like the way she and Saeed play off each other and bring out the humanity in each other. I love the way her backstory is slowly expanded upon throughout the episode. I also like it for moving the plot forward, introducing new mysteries, paying off the setup from Pilot Part 2, that being the French transmission, and ending with Saeed grabbing Danielle's maps and notes. The only thing that really frustrates me on rewatching is how her character, her backstory, the others, and the Whispers are handled later in the series. On a separate point, it's kind of strange how nonchalant Sayid is about finding that cable on the beach. We can only imagine how different the series would have played out if Locke had found it instead. But even Sayid should want to go back and investigate. Who knows, it could be related to the radio tower. So that last part is the reason that I was most excited to talk about this, because you and I completely forgot to talk about the cable when we talked about that episode, and we forgot to talk about it in our group discussion. So, so I've done 2 of the 3 episodes on that Lost episode so far, and neither of which did we talk about that. So to respond to that point first, it is the first weird thing that Sayid discovers in that episode. Like, the first thing that happens to him is he discovers that cable, he follows it, gets in her trap, he's knocked unconscious, he's tortured. She lays all this bizarre information on him. He gets the maps and stuff, and he decides he needs to go back to his people. He's injured. He hears whispers at the very end, and then he feels like he needs to warn his people about that. All of that's to say, I think, after all of that, it might be a minute before Sayid even remembers the cable. Maybe. Do you disagree?
Well, in the name of the...
Lucas.
Yeah. 43434.
You nailed that.
Yeah. I don't know why that number stuck with me. Sorry, Lucas. To that point, though, didn't think anything of it, but hearing it now put out there as a point of conversation, it does seem odd. And the reason it seems odd is that cable would be right up Sayid's alley. Sure. If it were Boone who found the cable, and then all these things happened to him, no shocker. Charlie, probably not. But, it is a little bit weird. Sayid's the one that... he's willing to go out in the jungle and be by himself because he's not happy with the person that he, let out of the cage, so to speak.
Well, and he did have multiple episodes. The whole first part of this series, until he finds her, a big plot arc of his is trying to locate the source of the signal.
Yeah.
And the cable seems like a good lead in that investigation.
Yeah.
So that's me agreeing with you there.
I just again, I didn't think about it. So kudos to Lucas, but
that I feel like serves my point. I get it's different. Like if you were actually living in that situation, but the fact that you and I forgot to talk about it because it was the very first thing that happened, and the fact that me and all the first time viewers forgot to talk about it because it was the very first thing that happened, I think that backs up what I'm saying, that Sayid, after being injured and tortured and delirious, and it makes sense that at this point, he hasn't been, at least not out loud or on the surface, maybe internally he has thought about it, but it's not his immediate priority to get back to that and investigate it.
Almost like to us, after watching all of his trauma, we forgot about the cable. Is that what you're...
That's what I'm saying. Yeah,
for sure. Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, and who knows? Well, Lucas probably knows. But what I'm saying is, where we're at, maybe Sayid will bring the cable back up, and maybe he will try and look more into that. I think Lucas's comment probably hints that doesn't happen, but I think I'll have more to say about it.
Yeah,
when maybe that topic comes back up. Well, okay, so now that we've addressed that, the fact that we never talked about that cable in that episode, I'll just ask you what I should have asked you then. Any memories, and if not, thoughts or theories on what the cable's about?
It's a landline. It's just somebody's phone line. No, because now thinking about it, the only thing that kind of blows my mind is how easy it was to find, roughly, right? Clearly no one was trying to hide it because, all the ebb and flow and the beach and everything, it's it shouldn't be so on the surface that it's just going to get exposed. If you wouldn't want somebody else to find it and you're already on the island, chances are you already know it or expect company, so to speak, right? So, that seems a little weird, but again, if we're just talking, phone lines, communication lines, electrical lines, whatever this line is, the dumbest person in the world is going to want to follow that cable and see where it goes to, because one way or the other, it goes to something more civilized than anything you've experienced on that island up to that point.
Yeah.
Most likely.
Yeah. Question that I think is interesting to consider at this point is, there's going to be something interesting on either end of that cable, you would think. Like either something's coming from off the island going into the ocean, or vice versa. What are you channeling from the ocean back to the island, or vice versa?
Yeah.
And it's like that's an interesting thing to think about.
Yeah.
So I'll back up briefly to earlier in Lucas's comment at the end of that first paragraph. He said, "The only thing that really frustrates me on rewatching is how her character, Russo, her backstory, the others, and the whispers are handled later in the series." This is something that obviously I would have to follow up with Lucas about and maybe talk about in my spoilery series. I will say for my part, just for any first-time viewers watching this, I don't personally feel that disappointed about any of that. I will say I would have preferred to see a bit more of her story, like her backstory depicted on screen than we do. Because you will eventually get some of it on screen. But I would have really liked to have seen like the full thing. So there were some minor disappointments that I would say that I've had. Some of the reasons I think Lucas might have been disappointed by those things I can appreciate. But yeah, Lucas, if you feel like getting into that some more, I would be happy to talk about that in some more of my spoilery episodes. Well, and then just to go back to his original thing about like the things he liked about it. At the very beginning of his comment, like what he started out with was talking about why he loved the episode where we didn't. And he mentions that he loved the character of Russo, how she's portrayed, all the intrigue around her backstory and the whole idea of her living alone in the jungle for 16 years after losing a child. Really liking Saeed and her playing off each other. And I love how her backstory is slowly expanded upon throughout the series. Or throughout the episode, I mean. Is there anything like that you would have in response to why that stuff didn't work for you? Or did it work for you and your issues with the episode weren't really related to any of those things?
No, I mean, I guess none of the things that Lucas 4344 is talking about stood out to me. So I mean, like I'll blame it on, as we've talked about, maybe my lack of the intellectual depth given to, her character reveal and like for instance, I'll pick on the one part, not pick on it, but I'll address the one part, like the way that they portrayed her character as living in the jungle by herself for 16 years after losing her son. I put exactly zero thought into that. It's like not again, like I say, blame it on me, but I just didn't put any thought into that. She was, she's a crazy lady living in the woods, been living by herself. Like, check. Good enough for me. Could have been 16 years. Could have been 6 months.
Yeah, that's fair enough. For me, I just, I don't really think I have anything new to say about it that we didn't already say. But, and I don't even remember if we ever really locked down why exactly. But yeah, it just didn't. It just wasn't satisfying for me. The amount of ambiguity, like the ratio of like explanation, if you will, or backstory, if you will, to new questions. Like it just to me just raised so many more questions about this French woman and how she got to the island. I mean, she tells you they were on a science expedition. What does that mean?
Yeah.
Why were they armed with rifles? Where were they going before they crashed on this island? Then there's all the stuff that she mentions about after they got to the island about, no, I haven't seen other people, but I hear them, and they were the carriers, and my people got sick, and what happens if we got rescued? I had to kill them. Watch your people. And then, Alex was my child. Like, that's at the end. It's funny, because it's like me recapping it like this. It's like, oh, no, that is all very interesting stuff. So, again, I'm still trying to lock down the reason that it doesn't work for me. Maybe because, like, and again, it's weird, because I didn't feel this way when I first watched it when I was a teenager. But it's like watching it with other people now and watching it as if I'm watching it for the first time. I feel like it sets up the expectation of we're going to get some answers here, and instead it does the exact opposite. And so retroactively in my brain, I'm like watching it as a first time viewer and being like, yeah, that's not satisfying. Maybe give us a little bit more before you give us more. I don't know. This is all me hypothesizing in the moment again, but anyways, obviously I'm not saying that Lucas is wrong. I'm just, again, trying to figure out for myself why I didn't feel the same way that Lucas felt about those same things. But yeah, I'm definitely glad that it works for Lucas. And But as far as the first time viewers go, I think we had 2 that night. They both liked the episode. They had no complaints. So I think a little bit of it is me projecting certain things onto my expectations of what first time viewers would think about it. Then again, you didn't like it, and you were basically a first time viewer.
Definitely didn't have enough memory of anything to base my thoughts that we talked about off of an old opinion.
Yeah. Okay. So thank you, Lucas, for your comment. As I said, he left that on the video version of our 9th podcast episode, our 9th official podcast episode. If you guys would like to leave feedback of any kind or respond to anything that we've said, you can do the same. You can leave a comment on the YouTube channel, or you can send an email in to dr.candlepun@gmail.com. And there you can send your message either in written form or a video version. Like in last week's episode, we had Ben who sent in a really cool video message. Or you can just send an audio message, which we also had one of those a couple weeks ago. You can send any of those via the email. Again, that's dr.candlepun@gmail.com. And as always, we really love talking with you guys, like hearing your guys' perspectives on things makes this a richer experience. So yeah, we hope to hear from you guys, and you're actually going to have a bit more time to send stuff in, because we are going on a bit of a hiatus, just like Lost did 20 years ago. We will not have a new episode until 4 weeks from when this is being released, but we hope that you will come back and join us for that. That one is called Whatever the Case May Be.
We hope to see you then.
I would now like to give a special thank you to the currently active donors. These include candidate number 90, Ben Ward, candidate number 108, Jeffrey Winslow, candidate number 69, Brian Phillips, candidate number 32, Chuck Boyd, and candidate number 341, Hans. If you too would like to become a candidate, you can do so for as little as $1. One-time or recurring donations can be set up on Ko-fi.com/Candlepun or Patreon.com/Candlepun. A donation of any amount will get you credited in this podcast and added to the candidate wall, which will be displayed in all video versions of the episodes of this podcast from that point forward, even once you're no longer donating. I would also like to take this opportunity to thank the multiple people that have donated equipment and resources that are used in the production of this podcast. These include Mary Mullins, Brandon Huth, Charles Huth, William McMahon, and Charlene McMahon. Until next time, namaste and good luck.
You know what? Cut it. Just cut it. Cut the whole thing.
To like this video, click the thumbs up. Or, if there has been an incursion by the hostiles, click the thumbs down. To leave feedback, enter a comment below. To be notified when more videos arrive, click the circle and then select the notification bell. To view previous content from this channel, click either of the 2 boxes.